All right. Well, here's an oldie but goodie. Get it? Oh man. So what's going on? I'm going live right now because why not? So you see here, obviously this is the Renee Nicole Good uh, footage. Um, this is a tragedy. Obviously, you don't want to see people get hurt. You don't want to see people get shot. I mean, obviously, and I don't know her. I mean, obviously, she has people are saying she was a wife and a mother, and um, she was she was visiting, I guess, from I don't know if she had purposely driven for this purpose to confront ICE or what. She's from Colorado, maybe originally from Minnesota, but anyway, nonetheless, she was, she's, you see her here interacting with the police or with ICE. And I guess that's really my point here. There's a couple things I see wrong with all this, and I'm gonna save the outrage and the cursing and the screaming and all that stuff. I'm gonna save that for everybody else because you're getting a lot of that. I'm gonna try to keep it calm and try to really just be very decisive here as to what I think the real problem is. The problem here is I've talked about on this channel illegal immigration is cannon fodder. I've talked about on this channel the economics of it, the fact that America, like every other developed country, capitalist country, you need cheap labor. They brought in, these are the new slaves, keep them in the dark, take advantage of them, use as much. Now, some of them find ways to take advantage of us, but for the most part, good, hardworking people come here, they exploit their labor, and, it happens across all sectors now, whether it's home care, child care, lawn care, I mean, you name it, right? So we all know that part. Um, but but when you have so many people that have come across the border, and you knew Trump when he came into office, you knew that they were going to try to fix the illegal immigration problem, closing the border, getting people out. I think targeting the quote unquote criminals makes perfect sense. I understand some people will say, well, they're all criminals. I get that. But the point is, people who have come here and committed second, third, fourth, five, 10, 20, 50 crimes after they gotten here, extreme minority, but there are people, right? So I'm not disputing the purpose of ICE. What I am disputing, though, is the fault of the government. I think the government's taking no blame. They need to take all the blame. Here's why. They're using this issue as political cannon fodder. They want all the people who are pro immigration or pro, you know, um, or anti government or anti American, whatever you want to call it. They want all those people to come out and protest in favor of against ICE, and the constituents or I should say the representatives of those people who run some of these blue states, what they're doing is they are silently protesting the president by not cooperating. But here's the problem when you don't have cooperation. The problem is that now ICE is out there targeting people that they shouldn't be. I don't think they should be targeting random people who work in neighborhoods. I think they should be going to the jails, going to the prisons. If they're called to help with a gang or something, they should do that. And they should be doing border patrol. They should help with that, right? I mean, they should not be exclusively going after any person who just happens to be overstaying their visa or potentially looking for someone who's an illegal. I think that gets you into this situation you have here because ICE are not police officers. This is really my point. ICE is not a police department. ICE are federal agents. These guys are like military. They're coming in, they are not used to dealing with citizens. They are used to dealing with illegals. They are trained to go in and pull people out who are potentially going to resist to the point of their life in order to not be captured and removed from the country. So it is up to the people like ICE to go in and get those people. The problem is now ICE is roaming around the streets of America, going into urban and suburban neighborhoods alike, and they are doing the work of police because they are interacting with regular people. Now, some regular people are following them. That is not recommended. Okay? That is not smart. I know people say, well, that's not revolutionary. You got to protest. Listen, man, you're following around 10 grown men with guns who are bigger, stronger, faster, and organized, and you are going to follow them around your car. Don't be stupid. Okay? Protest the government, protest the mayor, protest the federal government. Go to DC. The idea that you're going to confront these guys, they are not cops. They are not trained to deal with people. So now you have the fault of ICE for targeting the wrong people, in my opinion, but the fault of the politicians because they want this to happen. The politicians in Minnesota are telling their people, well, we're not going to cooperate with ICE. But when you say that, what does that mean? Functionally means the police, instead of the police coming out and working with ICE and helping them, what's happening is ICE is roaming around like this. They are not equipped to deal with regular people. The police are used to it. Now, the police aren't perfect, but they are trained and they are used to dealing with citizens. The odds are less that a police officer would have taken this shot. Now, I am not going to stand here and argue. If a car was coming at me, am I going to question whether it's coming to hit me or just to drive away? No. Okay? No, I'm not. I'm not questioning that. I don't want to do their job. I wouldn't be there. Now, I can't tell watching this video. Is this second officer, not the one who's reaching in, the one who's in front, is he actually going to get hit by the car or not? I cannot tell. It's hard for me to tell. But I would just say that if you had if you just had police working with ICE to organize and help to remove the people that actually need to be removed, then these kind of things would not happen. You wouldn't see the fighting and the macing and all the extra stuff that's been going on. I think the root cause there is that the politicians are using ICE as cannon fodder and illegals as cannon fodder to get regular people to fight each other. They want you, if you care about illegals, if this is really passionate for you, they want you to hate the ICE agent. The ICE agent, they want them to hate you because when they need them to clamp down on your civil liberties, they are going to make sure that they have their loyalty because they are viewing you as the enemy now. Do you see what's happening? This is a psychological grift. This is a game, and you're all being played. Don't be played. Don't fall for it. It's terrible what happened to this woman. It really is. And for people think it's funny or whatever, guys, no matter what you may think of her, even if you thought she was an idiot, it doesn't matter. She's a human being and she's an American citizen, and we just can't have this. But the way to prevent it is not through more protest. The way to prevent it is by going and protesting the people who are creating the problem. That's the government. They're making the policies. They're the ones who are setting ICE loose on the street, and they're the ones who are telling police departments not to cooperate. That's not cool. All right, I want to get to another story, but let me just yeah, happy birthday to Comrade Kim Jong Un. You could say a lot of things about North Korea, and I think, one of the lessons of Venezuela is now people should really understand and appreciate the fact that the leader of North Korea, he's not the problem. He's not the problem. He is right to be nervous about the West. He is right to be weary of America. He is right to be paranoid. You have Lindsey Graham going on television like a fucking idiot, threatening the Ayatollah of Iran. And this guy's frothing at the mouth. You got Marco Rubio, Spock gears himself. He can't wait to go in and take out Cuba. I don't know what's wrong with this guy. Bro, your parents left Cuba in 56. They were here before Castro came down and took over for Batista. So I don't know why you hate communism so much. Okay? If anything, you should thank communism. It's given you a political platform to bitch about for the past 30, 40 years. But for this guy He wants to take out Cuba. Trump's threatening Colombia. Lindsey Graham is threatening Iran. They're all talking about Greenland. I mean, what are we doing, guys? This is not what your voters voted for. Now you see why Kim Jong un has nuclear weapons. Now you see it. And by the way, him sending his troops to work with the Russians, it's a training exercise. It's to make sure that they're ready. Because, frankly, he has a right to be paranoid. Look what we just did. Do you not think that all the Democrats and Republicans alike would love to have him in New York court right next to Maduro? The only reason he's not in court is because he has nuclear weapons. It's not because he's friendly with China, because China's already proven they're not going to step up for you. China's not the Soviet Union. China's not the Soviet Union. China doesn't do that. They have a different foreign policy. That's their prerogative. They will help you. They will not stand in for you. North Korea is a little different. North Korea is a little bit more old school in the sense they send troops to help out Russia. They've maintained that relationship. They've strengthened that relationship. So you can understand why. Now, this story here, this is insane.
The board here lost $20 million or can't account for it. Parents want to know what happened and why the suggestion would be to raise their taxes in the town of Montclair. Despite having some of the highest taxes in New Jersey, an average of more than $22,000 a year, the school system is short $19.6 million, and officials do not know where the deficit came from. The first solution put forward was a vote to raise property taxes to cover the current school year. But a judge found the ballot question so confusing, the judge canceled the vote. On Monday, the superintendent, Ruth Turner, sent this letter home to Montclair families explaining the state will not advance state aid because of the canceled vote. Planned staffing cuts will take place to meet financial obligations, and the state is helping meet payroll until March special elections. The state will then step in only if the people vote no on raising property taxes. The superintendent says she has no choice.
That is the cuts that we've proposed to the board and to the public that would need to take place, not because those services and staff are not essential, is because we are obligated to reduce our budget.
Homeowners say there needs to be a better solution.
I'm also concerned that the solutions that are being presented are either a threat that the state will take over, or you're going to have to pay a lot of money for this year and then for 10 years after that.
On top of all this, last month, the Montclair School Board and Teachers Union approved raises starting at 3%. The school board workshop is tonight right here at the Montclair High School at 6:30, where parents will be.
Let me break it down. This is called extortion. So just so we understand, this is a public school, right? So the Board of Ed in that area, or the school board, whatever, they lose money. They lose $20 million, right? Quote unquote. Then they go to Trenton, New Jersey, the capital of New Jersey. Beautiful state. And they say, we need $20 million. They're like, nah, we're not giving it to you. You guys got to vote. You're either going to raise taxes or we're stepping in. Okay. So they go to the parents and they say, we lost $20 million. We got raises coming and other obligations. We already made cuts previously, by the way. This was in one of the richest states in the whole country, right? And if you guys don't pony up and agree to raise taxes in an area that's already property taxes, you're paying over $20,000, $30,000 in some cases. If you don't agree to that, then you guys are screwed. State's coming in. This is called extortion. And I know New Jersey knows about extortion because the mafia has been here for a long time, as it is in New York or whatever. But you literally, you feel like you are dealing with the fucking mafia. This is a ridiculous proposition, okay? I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is called extortion, folks. If you have the state threatening you, you have two options. You raise your taxes or we come in and screw around. Well, how about this? New Jersey, the city of Newark, is going to spend $110 million to to build a walking bridge over a 4-lane road. Let me repeat that. Newark, New Jersey, same stupid state, is going to spend $110 million to build a walking bridge over a 4-lane road. 4 lanes, folks. $110 million. Over $25 million a lane to build a walking bridge to go over it. And they don't have $20 million to support a school that just got robbed. What are we doing? What are we doing? This is why the average American has fucking had it. You can excuse my language, folks, but this is why the average American has fucking had it. You are telling me that you don't have $20 million for a school, but you got $110 million for a walking bridge in Newark, New Jersey. You got $1.5 trillion for military to go in and rob and capture a 60-year-old man and his 60-year-old wife to bring them to New York City court for drugs you can't produce, for guns that you probably have in your own home. This is why people have had it. This is why. People can't afford anything in this country, and you're fooling around threatening other countries. You got sitting senators threatening the Ayatollah of another country. You got a Secretary of State foaming at the mouth to take out a little island that's probably the size of Manhattan. And you're telling me you don't have money for schools. North Korea has money for school. China has money for school. You know, the U.S. has a school ranking that sits like what, 25th, 26th in the world. It's probably worse than that. So places that have freer or cheaper school system, meaning by what they put in, they have a better school education than a place like America, which puts in hundreds of billions of dollars and gets nothing out of it. You got kids that can't read a grade level all over the country. And it's no wonder. You got people that can't read and write in school, which produces stupid fucking adults. That's why the people that run this country are all stupid. Every one of them. Democrats, Republicans, they're all a joke. They're all a joke. And that's why no one believes in anything anymore. And I know a lot of people aren't ready to jump the broom. A lot of people don't want to convert. They don't want to become communists. I'm not saying become a Marxist. I'm not saying become a socialist. I'm not saying become a communist. I'm saying stop defending the system. Stop defending the United States and the stupid leadership and the stupid system. How do you do that? Well, one, from now on, protests are not, and this is something Kayla Mopper pointed out, protests cannot be reserved for the few people that think that they own it. So if you're Brian Becker out there, you don't own protests, bro. If you're a communist party and you're organizing a protest, you should welcome Tucker Carlson. You should welcome Candace Owens. Why? Because you agree on everything? No. Because they bring a larger audience, because we're all in it together. Unification is the only way. If 100 million Americans who are all suffering for the same reason stood together and said enough, no more taxes until you fuckers stop screwing around, you watch how quickly things would turn around. They can't sick ICE on everybody, folks. They don't even have 20,000 ICE agents. There's 340 million people here. Let's go. Enough. Yeah, I want to know if this is true. 77 stairs, $80 million to correct it in capital of Albany. That's pure criminal. That's just pure criminal. So the United States thinks it's going to sell more liquid natural nitrogen gas or whatever to European Union because of the acquisition. I mean, this is not going to make any American any money. It's just not. Um, let's see. Now, I wanted to this is something that I just saw a few minutes ago. So the president announces that the U.S. government is going to. Now, you could see President Trump is basically, he's either bipolar or he truly is trying to do two things at once that aren't going to happen. He's doing his usual abandoning capitalism to try to get things done routine. At the same time that he's acting like an imperial soldier for the donor class by stepping into all these foreign conflicts that he promised he would not do. So the domestic Trump is saying that he is going to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds through Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac in order to lower the price of housing. So you're if I'm hearing this correctly, in a way, you're trying to socialize housing. Now, it's not to guarantee housing. We're not going that far. This is still America. But this is a step in the right direction because, yeah, I mean, that could lower the price of housing. That could help. It's not going to help everybody. I mean, houses are way too expensive. So even if you lower it, you're getting hit at all angles because most people don't have the money saved to put down the down payment. Even if you drop housing by 10% somehow in the next month, if you dropped housing costs all across the board at 10%, that wouldn't do it. Most people can't afford it. Most people can't. Our income has not kept up with inflation. Productivity versus wages and salaries totally out of control. The cost of living, I mean, there's just, even if you did that. Now, I'm not saying don't do it. It's helpful. So I'm not knocking this. But I am saying this is not the solution, guys. This is a step, but it's not it. So, yeah. I mean, that's my issue there. I think it's a solution, but it's not the solution. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about is obviously what is Venezuela? What does that really mean? Multipolar world. Look, the West is not going to accept a multipolar world. I think it's pretty obvious, right? This is really the grand issue. Our leaders think it's 1945, 1991. They are not going to accept the concept that China and Russia are equal players with us on the global stage. Now, technically speaking, that's not really the case because the U.S. has 800 military bases, China has 2. The Russians, I don't know if they have any outside of Russia. And, Russia it's not as big as the United States and its economy isn't as big, but it's growing. So I don't think that they are considered or they consider themselves even on the same plane in terms of economics. But militarily, I mean, they're smaller than the U.S., but they're very powerful. They have a lot of nuclear warheads. They have submarines. I don't really know what the Russians. Here's the thing about Russia that sometimes people forget. For most of the last 100 years, Russia was part of a thing called the Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union was what, 16, 17 countries? Russia's one country. Now, they have the support of North Korea and they have the support of China economically, not militarily. And they have the support of Belarus. That's about it. They don't have the support of Ukraine. They don't have military support of Hungary or Estonia or, I mean, Poland. Or, I mean, there's a lot of countries. They don't have the support of everybody, but they have the support of Belarus and the support of North Korea. But Russia is not the USSR. It's not the Soviet Union. And because of that, there's some false expectations put on them in terms of what they can do. Now they're doing a lot. I mean, they have their people out protecting, some of these African countries, and they were in Venezuela. I don't know what they were doing there militarily, but Russia is not the Soviet Union. Russia's just one country. It was the main country, but it's a smaller country. the U.S., in a lot of ways, is still sitting on top of the pyramid, but the U.S. is sinking fast, and it hasn't learned any of its lessons. We couldn't manage Vietnam. We couldn't win the war in Korea. We didn't win World War II by ourselves. We didn't beat the Japanese by ourselves. The Chinese lost over 20 million people fighting the Japanese. We didn't defeat the Germans by ourselves. We didn't really defeat the Germans at all. Okay? The Germans really fell because of the sacrifice of the Soviet Union. They lost over 20 million people, and they're the ones that conquered Berlin, not the United States. I'm not knocking the accomplishments of the U.S. military by any way, but the U.S. has to kind of take it down a notch. Covert ops, U.S. has been off the charts successful in operation. Stupid ideas, stupid reasoning, but successful in terms of what they can do. No one disputes that. They never use it for good, but that's fine. That's what it is. But when it comes to this multipolar world, the U.S. just doesn't recognize it. It just doesn't. I mean, Trump early in the year said, if you try to build a BRICS dollar, you'll see what happens. And BRICS is still doing their thing, but it's pretty obvious that this is a overreaction to the multipolar world that Trump wasn't prepared for. And it's not just him, it's the United States. It's the State Department, it's the government, it's past presidents, everything, right? The multipolar world is permanent. It's not going to be broken up because the U.S. isn't going to win a global war. If you draw China into a war where it's North Korea, China, and Russia versus the United States, you're going to lose. And I don't know what that's going to look like. We have to be smart here. Learn some lessons. Be humbled by the mistakes of the past. Yeah, it's just, of course, younger people are poorer. And this is not going to change by bombing Venezuela. We're not going to get that oil. China is just focused on China. They're focused on business. BYD delivering self-driving cars that come off a fleet on its own. Home price index, obviously, it's through the roof. There, look at this. Trump wants to spend $600 billion more on the military. No, it would only cost $35 billion to fund ACA subsidies, $10 billion to house every homeless American, $30 billion to fund USAID, $9 billion to fund 2 years of college for all. But I guess, okay. Brian, look, I understand what you're trying to say. Let's not pretend like, a couple of years ago, just a year and a half ago, when Biden was president, you had no issue with spending on the military, no issue with spending on toppling Syria, no issue with spending on the war in Ukraine. And when people talked about potential fraud, especially in this USAID, why would anybody be in favor of funding USAID? We all know it's used by the government to screw us and to screw people in other countries. We all know it's just a fraudulent money laundering scheme. Come on, man. Like, I agree with your premise that we have all this money for things that people don't want, and we don't support things that people need. I mean, look, you don't need $9 billion for 2 years of college for all. You don't need that. You can lower the cost of college right now if you pull out of the school system. If the United States stopped funding college altogether, colleges would have to lower their prices. I know it's a capitalist move, but think about it. These schools, they're living high on the hog because the government is involved. If they weren't involved, it'd be cheaper because they wouldn't have any students. Nobody has that kind of money for school. Do you think 18-year-olds have that kind of money? Do you think the families that just got finished raising a child for 18 straight years? Children are expensive, man. By the time you get to year 18, do you think parents have an extra 100 G's for college? No. College would cost what it costs to go to the fucking barber shop. Yeah, this is capitalism, bro. This is not, this is our system right here. Your doctor spends 12 years in school to help you. Your insurance companies spend 12 seconds finding a reason to deny your claim. And somehow the insurance company gets to decide if you get your treatment. The system is backwards. Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. It's not only backwards, it's a feature of it. It's corrupt. Okay? It's corrupt. That's what it does. That's what it does. Because if doctors just prescribe things to help people and people were able to afford it, where's the fun in that for the insurance companies? Where's the fun in that for the pharmaceutical companies? What do you mean? Making medication for people to get better? That's not the fucking goal. The goal is to make that guap, right? That's our culture, right? We celebrate that. We celebrate the greedy culture. Greed is good, right? Greed is fine, but that's why you have to have something to contain it so you don't do stupid things, right? You're not a capitalist, you're an exploited worker. Yeah. I mean, look, you're if you're going to defend the system and then you're going to struggle to buy medication and you're going to struggle to, pay for whatever it is that you need, you're just part of the system, man. And this was an interesting post I commented on earlier today. President Xi had said he gave comments about reconciling how communist China can coexist with a market economy, right? And he said Marx and Engels did not envision a market economy under socialism and therefore could not foresee how socialist countries would treat capital. He said during the era of Lenin and Stalin, the Soviet Union implemented a highly centralized planned economy and largely avoided the problems of large-scale capital. The development of a socialist market economy is a great creation of our party, as it is a socialist market economy and it will inevitably generate capital in various forms. We must explore how to harness the positive role of capital and at the same time effectively control its negative effects under the conditions of a socialist market economy. So there you go. Now, what is he talking about? He's talking about the fact that the Chinese have found so far a way to reconcile the use of capital without abandoning Marxism. And my comment underneath this was it's all about what is in control. Marx said a foundation which they still follow is money in control of the government or the other way question mark. Does the government provide functional service to the people or just the rich corporations? That's how you decipher what's at play at a high level. Every comment, every problem, every issue that you see, everything, okay? It is all coming down to that question. People are sitting here, debating what do we do? What do we do about, invading other countries? What do we do uh, about what do you call it? What do we do about Venezuela, running Venezuela money for that versus our own country? What do we do? Talk about the farmers revolting in France. The farmers here got totally railroaded. They're basically being put on welfare. Why is that? Why is Montclair, the guy steals $20 million or they lose $20 million and the state basically says either raise taxes or we're coming in? They're threatening them, extorting them. Why does Newark, New Jersey, a place that has a ton of crime, ton of homeless, whatever, all kinds of issues, it's definitely gotten better, but it's not a clean place and it's not safe. Why is Newark, New Jersey spending $110 million on a walking bridge? We are corrupted by capital because the goal in our system is to extract the maximum amount of capital, and unfortunately that can come at odds with common sense. So what the Chinese are talking about is how do we reconcile the use of a not a capitalism, but of capital in a market economy that is controlled by socialism. Well, they're figuring it out. Now, to be fair, with all respect to, President Xi, one of the great leaders of our time, along with Kim Jong Un, President Putin, and a couple of others, Viktor Orban and whatnot. With all due respect, the manifesto and all of Marx's work and Engels' work, they weren't necessarily, they weren't saying that there'd be a socialist market economy, but they weren't really critiquing markets. They were critiquing capitalism. I think they did a good job of distinguishing that even Adam Smith was not necessarily interested in, exploiting the market, but exploring it. So Adam Smith, I always say, was the first market economist. He wasn't a capitalist. It was the system of capitalism really came about, maybe during his time and exploded later. But Adam Smith did a good job of explaining markets, but he was a market analyst. He wasn't a capitalist. So yeah, the Chinese are reconciling how do we keep socialism and Marxism going while we have a large market economy. And since they want to increase their consumer base, they are going to have to increase the participation of the market in their country. If you want to be less reliant on trade with the United States and less reliant on global markets like Europe, but you still want to continue to grow your GDP, then you're going to have to build things that your people buy. You're going to have to build things that your people use, not just selling to the rest of the world. And that's the challenge for them, but I'm sure they will achieve it as they set out to do because they've achieved everything they've set out to do. Because they don't have the restrictions and the stupidity, and they don't have the lack of culture that we have. The problem with the United States, among other things, is that we don't have the right culture in the West. We don't have a culture where we could produce leaders that can put the greed on the side and build things and keep in control capital. That'll never happen here. It'll never happen, folks. That's the problem. Our system is built backwards. The farmers in France had to dump literal shit on government houses. Think about that. After one of the biggest farmers' protests in France, President Macron decided to vote against the agreement between the EU and the Mercosur countries. Interesting. So you see, President Macron, basically, there's been protests going on in France for the past, I don't know, month, where it started in the countryside, it bled all the way to the cities, and the farmers basically united. Now, trust me, the fight isn't over for them because he's gonna want revenge and he's gonna come after them through some economic plan. Trust me. But what they did do is get him to say we're not going to agree with the EU. The EU is trying to essentially, this is why I look at the EU and say, you guys are like the polar opposite of the Soviet Union. You guys are like the Imperial Union because all they want to do is kill off anything that resembles people power and take everything under the corporate end. So what they did was they wanted to, because of their green laws, they want to restrict the size of the farms, cut the cattle numbers down, and eventually get people to sell their farms in basically the next generation. Don't allow them to continue to farm 30 years from now. No more family farms. They wanted to get rid of that. And the farmers felt the squeeze and they decided to protest. And they did. And it worked because they got Macron to back down. But the problem isn't just Macron. The problem is the EU. The problem is the West. Why does the West want to kill off all this individual farming? Because they want to control food supplies. Degrowth, right? You hear the Malthusian comment coming from Caleb Maupin all the time in his stream, right? These people don't believe in growth. They want degrowth. They don't want low interest rates. They want to crush everybody out of existence and control everything. Politicians solving real estate issues. Exhibit 2. So let's see. Seattle has the second highest office vacancy rate in the nation, 26%. In her infinite wisdom, the newly elected mayor is proposing a vacancy tax on owners of empty buildings. So Seattle has a solution. Oh boy. Look, here's the problem, right? Is she a real socialist? I don't know. I don't know a lot about her, so I'm going to reserve my critique. But I'll say this, the concept that she's proposing is actually capitalist. It's not socialist. Wait, what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? No, it's capitalist. So in banking, you have things called unutilized fees, right? Unused fees. So basically, banks charge fees to people or businesses when they do a loan. Like when you structure a loan in a bank, right? And I'm talking about like syndicated loans, like facility loans. So this is where large institutions borrow from other large institutions, sometimes individually. So it's one to one. Um, Sometimes it's through syndication, so there'll be multiple. If it's bilateral, that's like just one to one, right? If it's a syndicated package, syndicated deal, that's a multiple banks loaning to an institution at once, right? They come together, they put together a loan package. A financial institution, usually it's one of the banks or another institute, will be the agent. And as the agent, they're responsible for managing the loan, managing the payout to the dividends and the fees to all of the participants. So all the other institutions that are putting money in, they're responsible for drawing up the documents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll hire like a law firm to assist, obviously, with the documents. Anyway, the point is, when she says she's going to charge people for their vacant lots. Now, this is new in real estate, I think, but this is not a social solution. This is a capitalist solution, ironically, because banks charge other institutions for unutilized money. So if I have a loan package to you and it's $100 million, and in that 100 million, let's say that it's a facility that sits, you come back and borrow when you want, and there's quarterly fees to maintain, there's annual fees, whatever. I'm not going to go through all the minutiae of the different fees, but there's an unutilized fee. It's basically a fee that exists that you have to pay on the money that you don't use. Because if I allot $100 million to you, right, in this loan package. That's $100 million that cannot be withdrawn by anybody. That's $100 million that cannot be invested in any other business. So I have to make money not just on the money that I'm actively giving you, but on the money that I'm not giving you. Because time is money, right? So if I'm holding money for you and you're borrowing it as you need it, you have to pay me a fee, okay, for the money that you haven't used. Now it's not huge because it's obviously that would be backwards, but it's significant enough that it helps to pay something for the money that's sitting. So she's taking that concept and applying it to real estate. Now I don't know if she's knowingly doing that. I don't know if she ever worked in banks or whatever. I'm going to assume she hasn't, but it's interesting because this is actually a capitalist solution. All right, it's not communist, it's capitalist. So this is part of the banking system, part of the banking game, folks. This is I've been in financial services most of my adult life. I'm not an expert. I'm not a gajillionaire or anything like that, but I have worked in these financial institutions, so I've seen a few things. And one of the things I've worked on and administrated is these kinds of fees. I've done this before. So I'm speaking to you from knowledge that the mayor of Seattle is taking an initiative to do something that seems socialist because it's not fair that she's basically levying a tax for real estate that they hold that's empty. But it is actually a capitalist move because banks charge fees on money that isn't used. Okay? So she's doing that with real estate. She's saying if you have an empty office space and no tenant is there and you're holding it, we're going to charge you for it. She's trying to encourage the use of space. And she's trying to make a buck from these businesses. Now, is it going to backfire? It might. I'm not familiar with this being used in real estate. The difference is in real estate, the realtor would prefer to rent out the space. Now, sometimes you have speculative assets in real estate where people just want to own the asset so they can flip it. But if you have land that you want to sell or lease out or rent out, you want to use it. So I am going to assume, and maybe this is a bad assumption, but I'm going to assume that most people would like to rent out the space. Whereas when you have a bank, somebody has a deal with someone, both sides have agreed to it. What she's doing is she's almost penalizing the realtor for owning the space and not getting it rented out, right? But you can't force people to rent from you. So it's hard to apply this in real estate is really unique because you're punishing someone for not having the ability to sell a good or a service. You can't force people to buy goods and services. Like a bank is charging an unused fee to a participant, or I should say to the lender. I'm sorry, to the borrower. The lender is charging to the borrower with the participants, right? These are all the participants in the deal. If it's a bilateral, it's one. If it's not bilateral, it's multiple. So let's say 5 different institutions. They are charging a fee. Okay, they get a cut of a fee that goes to the borrower. But the borrower wants the access to that capital. The borrower wants that line of credit. The borrower wants that facility. Okay? The borrower wants that. In real estate, the person that's not renting from you doesn't want to rent from you. Now maybe they do and they can't afford it. That's a different issue. But the person that is holding the real estate, they can't charge people what if nobody's renting from them. So you're really punishing them for holding the asset, period. They have there's no way to reconcile that. It is not like a banking situation where in a bank somebody is willingly borrowing from you. So this is a unique idea. It's different. It should generate some revenue, but it's going to be controversial because the lawyers are going to say, wait a second, you're charging us for existing. That's not the same thing as in a financial institution where they charge you for a contract to hold money for them. President Trump says, I don't need international law. My own morality, my own mind, it's the only thing that can stop me. Well, I mean, it used to mean that he was against the wars in the Middle East. It used to mean that he was against being involved in all these, regime change things, according to his own words. So I guess his own morality and his mind have completely flipped. And now his own mind happens to be aligned with Lindsey Graham. His own mind happens to be aligned with Spock, a.k.a. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. His own mind happens to be aligned with the people that want to take Greenland or with the hedge fund owners that own assets in Greenland and Venezuela. That's where his mind is now. Interesting. President Trump signed an executive order eliminating mail-in ballots for voting and voting machines before 2026 midterm elections. I mean, I think that's a good idea, but still not going to help them win. President Trump confirms that 0% income tax is coming very soon. The money we're taking in is so enormous, you won't even have income tax to pay. Well, income tax, just for context. Well, I'll let him speak and make a comment.
That at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous that you're not going to have income tax to pay. That at some point in the not too distant.
Okay. So income tax originally, even when it was criminally passed in 1913, it really wasn't for every person, and it was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't permanent. So we shouldn't be paying income tax. We already pay a tax on everything we do. You pay tax on your car, you pay tax on your house, pay tax on your food, you pay tax on your clothes, you pay tax on gas, you pay tax on, you pay tax on everything. There's taxes in every business, every bill, there's a tax. Everything you do is taxed. Okay? Everything. Do you pay your phone bill? There's a tax. Do you buy toilet paper? There's a tax. Okay? There's a tax. There's a tax for everything. There's nothing you do that there's no tax. Nothing. And when you think that there's no tax, I got news for you. There's a tax. Because I've run businesses before, okay? Small businesses. You have to pay sales tax. Not only income tax, you have to pay sales tax. So even when a business isn't charging you a tax that they're putting in, they're factoring in the sales tax they have to pay into the cost of the service they are providing. So you're always paying a tax. You pay a tax on the stuff you buy, not just the tax at the register. You pay a tax on the good itself. Why? Because when the goods are shipped from overseas, there's a tax. When the goods are put on a truck or a bus, somebody has to pay taxes for that. Well, guess what? Those taxes get factored into the costs. There's nothing in this country or anywhere that is not taxed. So no, it is not a bad idea to get rid of one of those taxes. I think that's a great idea. Let's see what this is. Removal of Section 453, immunity for pesticides, was a victory that might be temporary. Friday, SCOTUS will decide whether to hear the Roundup cancer case. Okay, not familiar with it. I know Roundup is actually owned by one of the few large companies involved in that industry. I think they're owned by, is it Monsanto? I'm not sure. It's owned by a huge company though. And yeah, that's interesting. What is this? 76,000 troops are based in 20 European countries, 750 aircrafts, hundreds of helicopters, Black Hawks, 12 nuclear. They don't need to invade. You invited them. Yeah, I mean, the U.S. is everywhere. I mean, I would love for the U.S. to decouple from Europe. Europe should defend itself, and the U.S. can just go back to spending money domestically. I mean, we need help. We got people breaking into people's homes here. We got people getting hurt on the trains. We don't need our troops all over the world. We need a presence in this country, and we need to deal with crime here, and we need to uh, use the Army Corps of Engineers to rebuild. It should be an emergency to rebuild the bridges, rebuild the roads, tunnels. It should be an emergency to build homes for people. And I mean, that's what our military should be doing. It should be domestically supporting the homeland. That's part of defending the country. These are national emergencies. Why is the military stationed in Germany? The Germans don't want us there, and nobody here cares about them. So let's go. Moscow, 1968. Oh, it's a different place back then, huh? ACP Minnesota. Over the weekend, ACP hosted a winter clothing event, and well, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, look, the ACP, you got to give them credit. These guys at the ground level go out and do things. You know, I know there's a lot of critique of the leadership, right? They say like, well, they're just YouTubers, they're just guys who go on social media. I mean, you can argue, you can feel that way if you want. I don't know if that's true or not, frankly, because I mean, that's not my place, right? I know that they run a party, they put out some good information, and but regardless of your anger towards their leadership, which it's because they're the front face, so it's easy to yell at them. But regardless of that, you got to admit that the lower levels are out there doing some good things. So good for them. Let's see. Constitutional rights cannot be revoked on the basis of religion, and we condemn the Congressman Randy Fine's call for collective punishment of Muslims. I mean, Randy Fine seems to, he's out of his depth in the shallow end of the pool. So I wouldn't worry so much about him. I mean, he's just one of the slobs in Congress, unfortunately, who hates everything. He only cares about Israel. He doesn't care about anything else. And I mean, he's just, I don't understand what his problem is. I mean, he goes after everybody who doesn't fall in line and make everything about Israel, when in reality, like, he is supposed to be representing Florida, and the United States has a lot of problems and doesn't need, his attacks on everybody in the world. What is this? Barbarism in the Mech? Yeah, yeah, no, I know. I mean, yeah, we already talked about that. Um, Ibrahim Traore. I mean, I pray for this man. He's a great leader. 125,000 was given to plan the assassination of Traore and was caught on tape. Wow, France cannot survive without Africa. It will crumble. Dude, the the French really need to realize that there are better ways to get what they need out of Africa than by force. That's what the United States and Africa and France and many other places. You gotta go to a different mechanism than force. American Communist Party Chairman Haz al-Din said the situation in Venezuela proves that the most brutal measures of communist dictatorships to crush internal enemies were 100% justified. Ignore the crocodile tears for victims, hesitate and they'll snort, oink, and victoriously over your country's corpse. Yeah, I mean, look, Haz is right. I mean, look, this is an issue. If you are not Kim Jong Un, if you're not North Korea, if you're not China, even like if you are too loosey goosey, I mean, look, Vietnam, these countries, they're smart to be hesitant because we're not willing to uphold international law. You already heard the president say, "I don't care about international law. He cares about his own mind." So basically, we have no law and order internationally, which leads to having no law and order domestically because there's nobody here to defend. He's almost manifesting the caricature that people accused him of. And trust me, the Democrats will use this themselves when they have power. They told us you'll own nothing and be happy. Yeah, well, it's true. We lease everything in our lives, right? The Chinese cafeteria breakfast counter is served. Yeah, I've seen this before. Like the kids in these schools, man, this food looks amazing. It looks amazing. What is this? It's a movie advertisement. They replaced the library with a parking garage. Well, people have to park their cars they're paying for, and you know what the difference is, folks. You know what the difference is here, and I should probably write this in this post, right? The difference is when you park a book, you don't make any money off of it, and people get the books for free. When you park cars, people make a buck off of it. So it doesn't make them smarter, but it does make $1, right? I gotta break this down, man. Yep, gotta be a jerk there. Couldn't help it. The UK will send less than 7,500 military personnel to Ukraine. London admitted that the promised number of peacekeepers for Ukraine is unrealistic. Yeah, first of all, nobody wants to fight for London. No, why would you? Why would you put your life on the line for the pedophilia family and the crooked London city banks? Why would you send your kids to die for that? Come on, man. No one's gonna fucking do that. It's ridiculous. Excuse my language. I don't know what it is tonight. I'm just disgusted. I apologize to all my friends overseas for the foul language. So faith knows no bounds. Muslims in Russia demonstrated a powerful show of devotion, continuing to pray outdoors in heavy snowfall, even after the mosque reached its capacity. Russia has always been a country where Muslims and Christians fight shoulder to shoulder. Oh, it's true. I mean, Russia's a funny place because it proves it has a huge Muslim population, and there's obviously a lot of Christians, and it proves that even in the West, that Christians and Muslims can live together. The difference is that the Muslim population in Russia is not coming in at gunpoint to screw up the social infrastructure and to create a false sense of needing censorship and police state action, because that's all that's happening in the West. You have in Europe and the UK, for example, they'll bring in a bunch of people, they let them float over on a raft and just show up to their country illegally. They provide services to them. And then when anything goes wrong, if a Brit says something that quote unquote is offensive or does anything, then they use that to curb their liberties and arrest people for social media. And what they're doing is strengthening the government's position against the people. It's a great way to kill the worker because they're using the guise of of being socially sensitive and caring for people and all this and that. But the reality is they're just using them as cannon fodder. And in Russia, they don't do that. The people who live there, they're proud to be there and they're Russian. They're not acting like animals, and they're not being brought over to act like animals. Okay? And I'm not saying the immigrants who go to UK are animals. I'm saying that the government encourages one or two bad actors to do something, and then they are the true bad actor because they are gaslighting their own population so that they can put through some draconian laws that are people will say, well, it's just like China. No, it's not like China. It's not like China. 56 million people, 50 million people in the UK, 12,000 arrested for social media. China has 1.4 billion people. They have even less 6,000 people for social media. So come on, man. It's not the same situation. And the United Kingdom doesn't have the ability to support. They don't have the economy to support anybody. But they're using it as cannon fodder to get the regular people to hate each other. And then the police come in and they can create laws to further curb resistance to the decaying capitalist system in the United Kingdom. And that's what's happening in the United States too. ICE is attacking regular people. Regular people are attacking ICE. And all that's going to happen is someone's going to pass a law, and then they're going to pass another law, and it's going to curb your ability to resist a decaying system. Because that's what we have here, a decaying system. France doesn't have any gold mines, they have gold reserves. Yeah, Africa has all the cocoa plants that make the Swiss chocolate the best. Switzerland has no cocoa plants, right? Germany, no. Belgium, no. Same thing with gold. Okay. I don't know what this is. A man was spotted using his BYD Kin's reverse charging function to power his grill. What? No way. That's crazy. Half job openings are fake or the pay is garbage. So the structural break in the U.S. job opening versus hires data is still persistent and specifically for small businesses. Historically, job openings and hires move together. However, since COVID, they have completely decoupled. So hires are the red, it says. Yeah. Openings are black, hiring are red line. So you have all these openings and not enough people. Well, there's two explanations. Either A, the openings aren't real, or B, the openings are in fields that the that the citizens are not trained on because they don't go to school for these fields. So most Americans are just not in position to take these jobs, so they have to either outsource it or they just don't fill it. That's the only thing I can think of. Or it's fake. Because if that's the case, there's something wrong here. Now, this is interesting because I was looking at something last night. I forget who it was by. So job openings fell three. This is interesting. They fell 300,000 in November, the second lowest since December 2020. This was lower. This was far below expectations of 7.61 million vacancies. Over the last 12 months, job openings have declined 885,000 and are below the levels seen before the pandemic. As a result, the ratio of available vacancies to unemployed workers dropped to 0.91, the lowest since March 2021 and consistent with 2017 levels. The number of unemployed individuals now exceeds job openings by 685. This is why when people talk about the stock market versus reality, there's a decoupling, since we're using that word. There's a decoupling between the market and the reality for Americans. So stock prices can go through the roof, but that doesn't mean Americans are prospering. And what this means is if you have a ratio of 0.91, that means that there's less than one job open for every person available. So that's not good. Okay? That's not good. Okay? That means that you just don't have enough jobs for people and something's going to have to give. Now, is that because of technology? Is that because of businesses falling? Is it the falling rate of profit finally clipping off some of the businesses that were on the fringe and can't milk anymore or bleed anymore out of the stones? I don't know. Interesting. Yeah, I mean that. Well, the Chinese do love their leadership, and it's funny. President Trump. I mean, obviously there was the attempted on his life back in the campaign, but there was a time not too long ago when he could go into Philadelphia and the Bronx and go to a bodega and go to a barbershop and sit down with regular people, and there wasn't like a lot of fear. In fact, you could argue there was a time about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago, where President Trump was more comfortable sitting around in a McDonald's with regular people than he was being in a room with a bunch of donors, because the donor class is probably who tried to take him out. Now it feels like the opposite. And you don't get that vibe from President Xi. I mean, people can say they want what they want about China, and they'll say, "Well, China botting and all this and that." Well, you could do your own research. But the reason that people in China don't dislike their leadership like we do here is simple. The government there performs for its people. Doesn't mean everybody's rich, doesn't mean everybody's more prosperous. I'm not saying that everything about China I like better than the US. I like a lot of things about America. I like American culture. I like wrestling. I like junk food. I like sports. I like, whatever. Like I'm into a lot of American stuff, video games. I trust me. If I could sit on my ass all day and play video games and go to the gym and whatever and just enjoy Americana, I would. I really would. But one of the things that I appreciate about China is that they have a government that works for its people, meaning like they don't promise you the world, but they take care of the basics and they do the basics very well. That's why they have the best subways in the world. That's why they have the best high speed rail and the only real global high speed rail competitor, in the whole world. Like there's nobody who has more high speed rail than them, and prices are still reasonable. There's a reason that you can go out to eat there even with their income level. They don't pay property taxes. There's just a lot of things about their culture where they do things that produce for them. The bridges, the tunnels, everything. When you think about the US, very little is made for the people. It's made for businesses to make a profit from the people, but it's not really made for the people. Our government doesn't produce for us. It just doesn't. Everything it does is at the behest of its donor class and large businesses or large donors. And unfortunately, that difference is the reason why the top fits the top and the bottom fits the bottom there. Doesn't mean you don't have rich, doesn't mean you don't have corruption. You do. They execute people for corruption over there. Has anybody even been indicted for Epstein? China has executed more people in the last year for corruption than have been indicted for the Epstein Island thing. And our government has the tapes. Think about that. They have evidence. They know who was there. Their country works for them. It's not perfect, but they don't have the problems we have because the basics are done. And if you don't think that's important, well, if you're not in the 1%, you're going to realize why that's important when you don't have goods and services. Anyway, I'm done doom scrolling. This was good. Congratulations to the comrades in France. They won their battle tonight. Farmers from Belgium, UK, and Poland have joined too. Good. It's done. We need more of that. I agree. Go farmers, go regular people. Enough with these psychos who run these Western countries. They're all ruining everything. They don't know what they're doing. They're stupid. They're selfish. Maybe they're all satanic pedophiles. I have no idea. But good on them. This is great. So victory to the comrades here. The French Commune lives another day. This is a victory. It's no small feat. They won this, and you know what? Let's end it on a high note. Thank you, everybody.